So, folks, I have been kind of putting off doing this segment because, frankly, I've got a lot on my plate right now, just in real life and emotionally, and also, I needed some time. I need some time.
I am shimping off to Boston BWA.
Story the Bard, thank you for the $80 dono. God damn. All right. Thank you so goddamn much. Thank you. You guys are gonna make me cry again. God. But essentially, I made a long video about Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks and how she's kind of left the left, like, officially now. And I think that we're basically upon Cenk Uyghur's moment of leaving the left. In any way that matters, I guess. Putting aside the fact that he works with Brianna Wu, someone who is pretty goddamn conservative. But, like, we're going into weirder territory here. And I was going to cover this. We covered some of this before, but we're going to go through it now.
Pull for the
in its
riverboat.
entirety.
Glory to the trans.
Pluto Burns, thank you for the $20 super chat. And indeed, thank you for fueling the riverboat paddles, because they must go burr. That's my paddle. I can afford to give emotional support. Emotional support I also accept. Emotional and button support. Hit those sub buttons, hit those follow buttons, hit those like buttons, hit the buttons. All right. Anyway, we're going over this.
The debate over why Kamala Harris lost and who gets the blame continues to rage, and we're even going to have a debate amongst ourselves here in a bit. But first, somebody who worked on the campaigns of Al Gore, Hillary Clinton, and Kamala Harris has something to say. Take a look.
Here's the problem. I'm not concerned right now what the right thinks about the Democratic Party. I'm concerned about what I think about the Democratic Party. I don't like to echo the congressmen, all three of them. I don't like the fact that a small portion of our party is pretty much dictating where we are. That they are pretty much, we are being branded as the most extreme of us. It is not only politically problematic, as we just saw, because none of this stuff helped the other day. Without a doubt, it's a problem. But we need to take stock of why we are being held hostage to the far left. No one should be and wants to be kowtowing to the extremes of their own parties.
That was Felipe Reines, longtime Democratic consultant who has lost 3 different presidential campaigns. So how has the Democratic Party been held hostage by the left? Take a look.
The majority of Democrats don't agree with the things that we are being tagged with. Now, how that
Tick
works
through a couple of those things.
I think Democrats believe in common sense stuff more than you'd realize. I mean, it's not like any of us sit at home and don't talk to anyone. Most Democrats I know think there's a huge problem at the border. Most Democrats.
By the way, we've talked about this guy. We've talked about this clip. This guy is an absolute ghoul and is just trying to save his own ass following the election.
Democrats I know think, frankly, that
also, he's a Democratic strategist. Most of the people he knows are not indicative of the general vibe of the country.
At birth shouldn't play in women's sports and vice versa. Now, you can have a healthy conversation within a party, and you have to have a room within a party for all this. But at the end of the day, if you have some of these issues that are 80-20 across the country, you really got to figure out why they're being so tagged with one. And on one hand, it's easy because it's politically sexy. There's a reason why $40 million in ads on this topic were thrown at the vice president.
But that's not all. He went on to add Medicare for all as an issue that's holding the Democrats hostage, and took a swipe at Bernie Sanders. Take a look.
It's like Medicare for all is not something that the bulk of the Democratic Party believes in, but yet we spend tons of time on it. Now, on immigration, there are people who do believe, and I think I buy into it, that part of the problem we've had as Democrats is that we have gotten pulled to the left so far that we can't make common sense decisions. And look at I worked for Hillary, and she had to contend with Bernie. Bernie, went after Biden. I shouldn't say went after. He entered the primary.
God, I wish, by the way, can I just say I wish that the Democratic Party was being held hostage by the far left. I wish that were true. That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing. If that were true, we'd get so many more far left policies through.
There's no evidence that the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party has met with any success or represents this party. Yet, we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue.
By the way, the Bernie Sanders wing of this party did well with every single demographic that Kamala Harris struggled with. Just throwing that out there. Working class voters, Black and Latino voters, he did very well with those voters. It's because he had a working class message that was applicable across demographic lines.
Every time someone on the hard left says, "Oh, you can't do that," we're all gonna paralyze.
So what do Democratic voters actually think? We pulled the data. On immigration, 59% of Democrats and 64% of independents support the bipartisan immigration bill that passed in the Senate before Trump schemed with House Republicans to kill it. You can see that data there. Okay, so what about the next topic? How about trans rights? 80% of Democrats and 46% of independents would support a candidate who supports trans rights.
Also, like, yeah, your job as the Democratic Party is to push forward in these ways. If it's not popular, you have to adopt messaging that makes it popular. You are the one driving the messaging of your own campaign. Embrace it. Embrace your position. Stand strong with it. People respect strength in politics, okay? If you are like a voter who's on the fence, if you look at a milquetoast politician and a politician that is speaking from a point of conviction, or that the conviction comes across as strength to someone who doesn't know anything about politics. If you're just kind of a milquetoast, like, well, frankly, neoliberal or milquetoast liberal individual, when you're hemming and hawing about means testing bullshit, well, that doesn't come across as very strong. What comes across as strong is a message like, hey, we are going to cut all of your taxes and we're going to make our national enemy pay for it. That comes across as strong to voters. But you know what else comes across as strong to voters? Hey, we're going to give you, your mom, your kids, every single person you know and love, we're going to give them health care and make sure that they don't go into bankruptcy. That comes across as a strong message. We are going to raise your wages. That comes across as a strong message, especially if you have like a policy name to attach to it. Like we are going to surpass the fight for 15. We are going for the fight for 20. Like that feels like a point of strength. And that's the thing. Exactly. I'm just me. Do they think people didn't think Dr. King was too far left? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. died the most hated man in America when he was assassinated. And yeah, your job is to make those more progressive positions popular. That's your job as like a progressive. And, if you're not into that, and you're a Democrat, I guess that's fine, but I don't think you're suited for our current political times. Capitulating to the right is only capitulation. It just moves the conversation further and further right. Excuse me for the sneeze.
The support does decline when you ask voters about trans women in women's sports. Just 26% of U.S. adults think trans athletes should play on teams that match their identity.
And you can very clearly see how this is the result of a sustained propaganda effort and sustained Republican efforts to make it less popular. No one has a built-in assumption about like trans people in sports. That's not like an inherent thing that people have. They've been taught that for years. And that indoctrination yields a shift. But again, I want to point something out here. Republicans made it their job to make these positions popular, to decrease the level of support for trans people in sports. They made it their mission to do that, and they have spent an ungodly amount of money to that end. Okay? Also, Brutus Magnuson, thank you for the $5 super chat. A lot of people love Trump and Sanders at the same time, especially Rogan Bros. That tells you all you need to know about messaging / appealing. Yeah. And, like, the other part here is that if you are making these positions... I mean, let me put it this way. Republicans have made it their entire job to make these positions more or less popular. Democrats need to commit to that same level of like moving the needle. It's just that, frankly, a lot of them are too scared of pissing off their big dollar donors. And like, well, that's a decision that they're making, but I think it renders them unfit for the current time we live in. They have failed to rise to the political occasion.
What about Medicare for all? 72% of Democrats and 46% of independents support a universal government-run system. You can see that data there. So the question is, do any of these issues affect how voters behave in the ballot box? According to a Gallup poll in late September, the top issue for voters was, unsurprisingly, the economy. Only 10% of voters said it was either somewhat or not important, with everyone else saying it was either extremely important or very important. Immigration on this list of priorities ranked 5th, with 72% of voters saying it was either extremely or very important. Healthcare ranked 7th at 37% extremely important and 42% very important. And all the way at the very bottom, ranked 22nd of the 22 issues surveyed, transgender rights, with just 25% saying it was somewhat important and 36% said it was not important. So I guess Cenk and Jules, we're going to have a little bit of a debate here. There are a lot of people, a lot of pundits, a lot of Democratic officials.
Okay, side note, totally unrelated to anything being said here, but I really dig this guy's shirt. I think it's cool.
Saying this is why she lost. That's why she lost.
A quality
You should have done this differently. You should have done that differently. Okay, everyone's going to have a different opinion, of course. But for what Felipe Reigns is saying here, that the Democrats are held hostage by the left and on issues of immigration and trans rights, that's why she lost. And there's nothing that they can do about it unless they kind of purge these people from the base.
Who is this
do
guy?
You agree
I think
with
this
him?
is Jordan Uhl.
Am I misinterpreting it? I'm curious what you both think.
Yeah,
I believe this is Jordan Uhl. I think he's a contributor to TYT. He seems to be like a really good egg. I like him a lot. I don't know who this guy is. And this is Cenk Uygur in the middle.
so I've got a definitive yes and no. So first, I do think that the leftists that he's talking about are hurting the Democratic Party. That's what we're gonna, at a minimum, do it, because I know Jordan disagrees.
Let me put it this way. I think Cenk has this opinion because he's on Twitter 24/7. I think he's just so in the shit on Twitter that like it has skewed his perception.
But the first thing that we have to do is clarify the parts where we all agree
Jordan
he's
Uhl,
wrong.
my bad.
Okay, so there are, in my opinion, three wings of the Democratic Party at this point. There's what I call the 2016 Bernie wing, which is economic.
To be clear, I do follow Jordan Yule on Blue Sky and Twitter and stuff. I do follow him on that, but his avatar is Skeletor, so I have no idea. I had no idea what he looked like.
Populist, Medicare for all, paid family leave, $15 minimum wage, etc. I think all three of us are in that camp, okay? Then there is the 2020 Kamala, where you take Bernie's economic populism, and what she did was, because she was floating in the wind and she saw the leftists that were ascended, she thought at the time, so going defund the police, trans people getting surgery if they're undocumented immigrants, all of the
That's fucking crazy, man. The only people talking about trans people getting surgery if they're undocumented immigrants are conservative nut jobs. It's literally the only people talking about that.
those positions that I view to be extreme, okay? And I think clearly the voters view to be extreme. So Kamala 2020.
Also, it's not extreme for like undocumented immigrants to get like surgery. Like, is it extreme to provide health care to people who are injured when they show up at the hospital? Is that an extreme take? Is it an extreme take to say that prisoners should have access to health care in prison? No. So why on earth would it be different for undocumented immigrants? If you want the universal healthcare system, how on earth, like that doesn't, that includes undocumented immigrants. Like, what are you saying, Jenk? You support a system where like undocumented immigrants are like left to like die on like in the waiting room, like what, when they show up at the hospital? No, I clearly not. But that's the kind of system you're apparently imagining when you say it's ridiculous for, you know, for undocumented immigrants to have trans surgeries. The idea that trans surgeries are like an optional thing is one that's kind of rooted in like bigotry. Like the people in the trans community who need surgeries, they need those surgeries. They're not like optional things, they're medical necessities. And granted, some trans people, they don't need bottom surgery, or they don't want bottom surgery, or, you know, like each trans person is different. But like, if someone needs that bottom surgery, they need it for a medically compelling reason. It's not just like, oh, well, I'm gonna get a Brazilian butt lift. Like, no, that they're not doing that in prison. Come on. We like, just to reframe his statement here, he's trying to make it seem like the logical and good argument here for liberals is, yeah, we should deny undocumented immigrants healthcare, which is insane.
Hurts the party, in my opinion. And then there's the third wing of the party, which is the major wing, unfortunately, that we all disagree with here on this panel, which is Hillary 2016.
Yeah, it is sick, Dragonfly.
And in a lot of ways, Kamala 2024, where they come back to the corporate positions and they go, not only do I not agree with you on some of these trans issues, but screw Medicare for all, screw helping the average American, I'm going back to my corporate donors. And that's a disaster. And can we all stipulate that that is the #1 reason that they lost? Because they served their donors and not their voters?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Jules. Do you
To an
agree with
extent, yeah. I mean, I agree to an extent. I think the issue might be on my end a lot simpler, which is, you know, when I hear Reigns talk like this, and, you know, he's this front-running member of the DNC, he's reflecting this fact that Democrats have emphatically proven that they cannot be the solution to the problems that we have, because their primary goal is shutting down socialist or progressive movements, not taxing billionaires, not providing health care, not helping children. You see this time and time again, how much more time they spend blaming the left for their failures, because they're not addressing the key problems that we're running into. And like, I think that's the biggest reason Kamala lost. I think, you know, sweeping, getting popular vote, like electoral college, House, Senate, I think sweeping proves that this is the death of neoliberalism, not like, oh,
This is an accurate take. I don't know who this guy is, but he's correct. Wait, maybe the more information. Oh, Oh, does it say? Who's in the clip? It doesn't say. Okay, cool. Thanks. Wait, does it not? No. Oh wait, Jules Sudaltsev. I'm really sorry, Jules. Okay, cool.
The left is going too far again. Like I call this a Christo-fascist era.
Yeah,
Things are
correct.
not going back to the way
Jules
that they
is
were,
correct.
and this is their fault. So it's listening to this honestly pisses me off that like, oh cool, we're getting blamed for the problems that they caused.
Yeah, again, I think we totally agree on that. So, and the reason that they blame the left instead of actually delivering for the voters is because the left actually challenges their power. They could lose their party within the party, and then they got nothing, right? If they lose primaries, they're toast. So whereas if they lose a general election, who cares? They just come back and do it again, raise more money, keep more of it, etc. So I think that, Jules, what you're saying is something very similar to what I'm saying.
Okay.
The number.
I rarely do this, but I am going to do it this time. I'm speeding it up slightly because we're on a time crunch.
Number one issue is that they're serving their corporate donors and never delivering for the voters, and they want to distract you from that. So every time they lose, and no leftist lost, every time they lose, they blame the left. So we all agree on that. So let's get to the part we disagree on. So in my opinion, the GOP does this every single time. I've literally covered it for for a quarter of a century. Feel bad saying that, but I have for straight. And what they do is they go further and further and further until they find the most extreme positions that the left is willing to defend. And then they go, aha, that's what the whole left is. And every time they do that, they'll find some leftists who'll go, I'll fall right into that trap. And I feel like screaming, Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. It's a trap. So one of the things that Jordan just read you is so indicative. What have I been telling you guys? We fight for trans rights. They have complete equality. They get, whether it's, healthcare.
We fight for trans rights, complete equality with healthcare. Unless they're in prison and they're a certain type of person, I guess, in Jank's world.
Employment, constitutional rights, you name it. And the American people are on our side and the Democratic Party's on our side, and Jordan just showed that to you.
Welcome, Raiders.
80% of Democrats agree with that, 52% of all Americans agree with that, even despite all of this overwhelming propaganda against the trans community. But the minute you get the trans people playing in, trans women playing in women's sports, it falls off a cliff. And all of a sudden you're down to 26%, let alone undocumented trans immigrants getting taxpayer-funded surgery. My guess is that polls around 2%.
Yeah, but also, like, voters voted to keep, like, prison slave labor in California. Like, does that make that right? No. No, it doesn't. You have to be willing to push back on that. You have to be willing to be bold. Being bold isn't going with where most voters agree. Being bold is pushing beyond that. Like, again, Martin Luther King Jr. died the most hated man in America while advocating for an explicitly socialist revolution for the American economy. Okay? Like, that's where we need people to be. Like, you need to push beyond what most voters are comfortable with, because in the act of pushing, that's how you make people more comfortable with more progressive positions. Progress requires the pushing. And Cenk here is just coming out against pushing against conservative ideology. What a capitulation, man.
It's not an accident that the Trump team, once they started running that ad, saw great polling out of that ad and ran it again and again and again. And
yeah, the Green New Deal didn't come out of nowhere. Not the Green New Deal, sorry. The New Deal didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of a sustained and concerted socialist movement among the working class in America. And in a way, the New Deal defeated socialist revolution in America by essentially adopting enough social, like, safety nets to put the socialist movement asleep for a century. But, like, if you're going to start dismantling that, well, then it gives rise to a new socialist movement. Like, that's kind of how it goes. But Jack, pushing against them is big mean to their feelings. It's true. but facts over feelings, am I right?
And then it was their #1 ad, and they'd run it for $40 million worth. So are you guys saying that that ad didn't hurt and that we should keep going?
Yeah, the ad hurt, but it hurt extraordinarily more because Kamala Harris had no opinion on any trans person during her campaign. Like, she didn't say the word transgender during her campaign once. And if you have no pushback against their insane, like, ramblings, well, then, you know what? That narrative starts taking hold in the Republican base, in the working class base, where they're running those ads. The vacuum makes those ads effective.
Going in that direction?
I don't know. It's going to be hard to quantify what effect it had, but based on not just that one Gallup poll, but exit polls, other public opinion polls of what people's priorities were, we saw for months in the run-up and in the immediate aftermath, voters were largely motivated by the economy, economic policy, and their material conditions. So I think it might have changed the perception.
This is the thing, right? Like, people point to the culture war issues, but, like, you have to understand, from a Republican strategist position, the culture war issues are just the shiny dangly keys to distract people. They're just there to distract people from Googling what a tariff
I'd die
is.
laughing if Nancy Mace's actions cause people to drop their pants around her with the cry hashtag Nancy wants to see your junk.
I still think that the best course of action with Nancy Mace would be people leaving their piss and shit in protest around her office. That's my personal opinion, not a fact, not legal advice. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs, Saka Tanuki.
But I don't think it was what motivated people to either stay home or vote against Harris or vote for Trump. You look at where it ranked on that list. I mean, there was 22 different topics on there, and it was dead last. So
why did they run it the most, Jordan? Why did it work the best?
I don't even think that
because, again, if people are talking about trans kids in sports, they're not going to be talking about, like, what the hell a tariff is. They're not going to be talking about, like, any like, how, hey, wait a minute, maybe tariffs don't actually help the economy. You know, they're not going to ask questions. And if Kamala Harris doesn't have a compelling economic narrative that matches that, which she didn't, well, then what those working class voters get is, well, this guy says he's going to, you know, cut all my taxes and then make China pay for it. And also the Dems are doing this weird, like, trans kid in sports stuff, and that's weird, and I don't like that. And, you know, and then they go off on, like, a 10-minute tangent because people are more familiar with high school sports than they are with what economic policies are. You know, Kamala Harris may have had 100 pages of, like, liberal economic reforms, but, like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really translate to much. And even if you're going, well, I'm going to give you a $6,000 tax credit the first year you have a child. Well, okay, but what if you already have, like, 3 kids? That tax credit doesn't really help you. What if you're elderly? That tax credit doesn't really help you. What if you're young and don't have kids yet? That tax credit doesn't really help you. You can't run an entire campaign off of that. What you need is broad populist economic things to run on. Like, hey, I'm doing a $20 minimum wage. Or, hey, I'm going to do universal health care. Or, hey, I'm going to use $900 million of the billions of dollars I've raised for my campaign to buy all medical debt in America and summarily rip it up as my last campaign act. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris had done that? People would fucking turn out to vote. Because that sends a message of goddamn strength. And it simultaneously frees up a sizable portion of America from $220 billion of debt. Okay? You can buy all of that for $900 million.
it worked the best because I was just in Arizona and Nevada multiple times over the past couple months, and I saw the ad of her on The View saying there was nothing different that she would do than what Biden did. I saw that way more.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing, right? Jordan's correct here. Like, when she doesn't distance herself from the Biden campaign at all, and people are talking about, oh, the Biden economy is so good. Guys, lowering the unemployment rate means nothing to a working class person in a rural town, or frankly, even in a city. It means very, very little. Oh, great. You finally got, like, more people working at Jamba Juice. wow, that's enough for them to still have to work out of their car. But that counts as lowering unemployment. You know, like, you can have numbers that look decent on a graph that don't translate into like the lived experience of working class people. And when Biden failed to get a $15 minimum wage passed, that tangibly affected people. That failure like resonates throughout all working class communities, because guess what? Those working class communities, they're making only slightly more than minimum wage. Only slightly more. And that's, you know, that slightly more, that pads out those numbers, makes that economy look even better. Look at how many people aren't earning minimum wage because they earned like a 2-cent raise.
Than the trans ad. And then within that, they just conflated the Biden administration, the 4 years of Biden, with Kamala Harris. And they said, we can't afford 4 more years of Kamala Harris.
But that was not their number one ad. Their number one ad was a trans ad. And
because
it was just polling through the roof.
It's also a messaging thing. And here's the thing. The Harris campaign did not have their hands tied. They had 3 times the money. They had $1 billion. They had an ad budget of $700 million. They spent $40 million on that ad. Get out and spend 80. Spend 120 on
defending your most unpopular position?
No, you need a simple message on that, and you shouldn't throw trans people under the bus. You don't just abandon something because it's
inconvenient.
But that's not
throwing trans people under the bus.
Yes, it is.
Wait, an undocumented immigrant comes into the country and says, "I demand knee surgery."
That's not her policy.
But brother, I didn't.
Wait, but that's not how undocumented immigrants work. Like, undocumented immigrants don't come into the country and go, "Ha! Now you have to treat my condition." Like, what are you talking about, bro?
You just got here. What are you demanding surgery from me for?
That's such an outlier. It's not even her policy. It wasn't in her platform.
Except it was her policy.
4 years ago, she mentioned it at an event. It wasn't in part of her platform.
But it was her policy in 2020. Yeah, and Trump's policy in 2020 was literally an attack on the Capitol. Okay. But we're not talking about the 2020 election. We're talking about this one.
Platform.
All right, so let's go to Jules.
Well, Jake, I think what you're doing, and you know,
also, can I just point out, average voters don't give a single fuck about primaries. The vast majority of people who vote in the general election, and that's it. Most voters don't turn out for midterms. Most voters do not turn out for primaries. And most normal people who aren't politically brain poisoned, like all of you, God forgive me, most people have no idea what people were saying in the primary 4 years ago. And frankly, most normal people have no idea what was said in the primary this time around. You know, like, I doubt most Republican voters have any idea what Ron DeSantis was talking about, or could tell you what Ron DeSantis was talking about. That's just kind of how it be.
I love you, but I think you're falling for a massive trap that Republicans never fall for, which is, like you said, they set up this domino of like this tiny issue that, you know, rounds down to zero and say this is the biggest issue of the election. And like Democrats, not like leftists, but Democrats will jump in and say like, well, actually, you know, here's the stats about this. So actually, like, you know, we don't agree with let's say, like, you know, trans women in sports. But that's not what, like, when Republicans do heinous stuff, the Republicans just say, yeah, who cares? We're not even going to talk about it. Democrats insist on having the conversation about stuff that essentially doesn't happen or happens in such a small way as to be useless or ineffective to the larger story. And Democrats will jump onto it in an effort to demonize leftists and secure their own position. And that's really frustrating. Like, it's crazy to me that trans women in sports is a massive issue when, again, the percentage of people that this affects.
Honestly, the correct position to take is like, we have better things to do than to worry about like children's sports. We're national level lawmakers, you know, like, let them play sports. We have bigger fish to fry.
Literally rounds down to zero, where stuff that actually matters and stuff that Republicans are doing is hand waved away with nothing, and it doesn't become part of the conversation. Nobody says,
you guys
hey, we should talk about that.
You guys are not addressing what I'm saying. So when I go on right-wing shows, I tell them, look, I'm for 100% equality and justice. That's the most American thing you could be. Trans people should have all the rights that anybody,
unless they're undocumented, apparently,
else has. And guys, this affects about 7 people in the country. You're trying to pretend that this is the most important issue. This is the least important.
Then why are you spending breath talking about it? You're the one spending time talking about it.
issue, the smallest issue there is, and you know you're doing it to drive a wedge between us. And in fact, Dan Holloway, who bless his heart on Drinking Bros, a right-winger, was like, you're right. That's why they call it a wedge issue, because it's supposed to drive a wedge between us. That's the right way to handle it. And so I think we all agree on that. But then you guys are saying, no, dig in when they find the most unpopular position and defend it until you lose. Why? Why would you defend a position that is...
You defend it until you win, Jenk. That's what progress is. Like, I don't know. Maybe a good example would be would be the sit-in campaign of the civil rights era. Deeply unpopular, but over time it won people over. But it was not a popular thing. It's why police put dogs in hoses and like beat black people bloody. And their supporters, like, and brought them to prison. Like, when Martin Luther King Jr. is penning Letter from a Birmingham Jail, he's talking about the constant effort to capitulate to conservative values, rather than the bravery, rather than the necessary bravery to push forward.
Deeply, deeply unpopular.
No one's saying dig in, but don't abandon members of your community. It's the right thing to do to stand up.
But who's abandoning them?
But okay, yeah, this is actually the correct take. I do think you should dig in if needed, but an even better thing is to redirect the conversation and keep your forward momentum.
Harris did.
How?
The last couple of weeks of the campaign, she distanced herself from trans issues, from trans rights, because...
But what
frankly, I don't think she even talked about trans people during her campaign prior to the last few weeks.
Trans rights, Jordan, which trans rights? They do not have the right to demand free surgery when they come here as undocumented immigrants.
Who was doing that?
That was literally Kamala Harris's position in 2020.
It was a hypothetical. It was a hypothetical.
But no, that.
But who was doing it? Is it happening at scale?
It's not even hypothetical.
How much money are we actually spending?
Jordan, it was actually policy under Trump too. It's not a hypothetical. It was policy. And
Trump, yeah, because I guess again we're talking about redirecting conversations here. The way to redirect this conversation is that, yes, people in custody deserve healthcare. People in prison deserve healthcare. People being held by the U.S. government deserve healthcare. Full stop.
Trump even continued it. You could have fought back that way, but going, like, guys, even if Kamala Harris did or did not defend it, you guys are defending it. It's the leftists who are saying, this is the hill we're going to die on. Well, that's really ridiculous.
No, we're saying it didn't
feels
cost
like
her
we're
the
being
election.
dragged onto that hill.
He's saying that
when
cost her the election.
Look, guys, here's how the progression goes. So they go, okay, we hate gay people. Oh, that didn't work. But back in 2004, they go, okay, well, we hate...
Wait a minute. It absolutely worked to say I hate gay people, like, in the 1990s. My partner literally had people pull up to her gay prom and stone her and the other gay kids. And they didn't get chased off by police either. Okay? Like, that was a thing that happened in the 90s. And yeah, you had to fight for it not to work. Cenk has been covering this for a long time. He should know.
Hate gay marriage.
Oh God, default X. I'm sorry to hear that. My gay uncle got jumped by police in the 90s. Jesus.
Oh, that did work. Okay. Now at the time I go, wait, are we talking about constitutional rights? Are we talking about fundamental human rights? Okay, I know it's not a winning issue for us, but I'm going to fight on that, and I believe in gay marriage.
Gay marriage was not a popular issue until like 2012. Maybe? Like, the example he's going with here is insane to me.
But I could make an effective case for it. I could convince people of it, and we did. We fought and fought and fought, and we convinced people.
Yeah, you had to fucking fight. That's the point. You have to fight for it. God damn.
Right? So then they go, nowadays, they come back and they go, okay, well, attacking gay people is not working anymore. So let's attack trans people. It's so transparent what they're doing. And by the way, I would love for a Democratic politician to say what I'm saying now. Do you see how they're trying to drive hate towards trans people? Okay, so they attack the core of their rights. It doesn't work. Then if you remember in the beginning, Trump said they shouldn't be in the military. And that didn't work. And we're defending because that is core rights, right? Willing to die for our country? Are you kidding me? Of course we defend. they're weirdos that attack people in bathrooms. No, that's mainly straight guys, let's be honest, okay? So we defend and it doesn't work. Then they get to, they should be able to play in the WNBA and Olympics, etc. And I go, well, I think that's up to the WNBA and that's up to the Olympics, and I'm not sure that I agree with that. And let alone the fact that I know that's a super unpopular position, and it is not a core right to play in the WNBA. It just isn't. But
Oh man, Cenk, you're such a warrior for trans rights. Hey, did you know that it wasn't a core right for black baseball players to play baseball against white baseball players? I wonder if that had any significance in history. Weird.
every other leftist goes, nope, Cenk, you're a fascist, and you're agreeing with the right wing. We love this issue, and of course they should. We're going to defend this 200%. And then we got smeared. So you guys made a giant mistake.
What's wrong with this guy? A complete lack of insight and critical thinking, I guess.
Love how no one has to address his co-host's rhetoric in this discussion. You do not approach a TYT host that way.
God. I mean, yeah. Wild stuff from Cenk here. Thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs.
No.
I think most leftists want to talk about the economy. I think most leftists want to talk about workers' rights and free healthcare and affordable housing. But there are these fringe issues that are brought to the forefront by Democrats who want to say what you're saying in order to distract from those issues because they can't defend those issues. They can take this like little wedge issue and say like, well,
Man, it'd be really great if they had a trans person on for this segment.
Don't agree with trans women in sports. We don't agree with, and if you defend it, then you're being crazy. But not to do an impression of you, Cenk. But there is this lack of conversation about the things that Democrats are not doing. And I genuinely think that even having these conversations to this degree, instead of hand waving them away as being like, you know what, these are fringe issues, we can deal with them as fringe issues and not as the main issue of the campaign.
But
I think that is something that.
So, Jules, let me agree with you, but then challenge you. The part I'm agreeing with you on is when Philip Rain says, oh, trans, undocumented, again, not just trans rights, but trans undocumented immigrants asking for taxpayer-funded surgery, and then he goes, same thing as Medicare for all. No, not the same thing. Medicare for all polls at 72%. And yes, these corporate Democrats.
Yeah, but Cenk should know that how you brand it matters, right? When you call it Medicare for all, well, people like that. Polls at 72%. When you call it socialized medicine, a lot of people in America hate that because socialism. And like support for it drops off like the face of the earth. In a similar way, when you call something, an undocumented immigrant getting trans surgeries on taxpayer dime versus like support for that also seems to fall off a cliff. But when you phrase it as should prisoners get health care? People are like, oh yeah, of course. The framing matters. And the fact that he's bringing up a very specific example that like makes it pretty apparent how full of shit he is on this. I don't know. It's the right word turn is very blatant to me.
Are trying to distract you from that. We all agree to that. But the Democrats didn't bring up that issue. The Republicans, the right wing, brought up that issue. So, but when I say, hey, guys, let's get past this issue, this is not a winning issue, and I don't even agree, then all of the leftists online said, no, we love this issue. We're going to fight on this issue.
Have the mic.
What?
Democrats have the mic. Democrats are the ones who respond to these issues. Like DNC Democrats are the ones who leftists don't have a mic. Leftists
no, you're
it
wrong.
also
They have
really
a giant
making the
mic on
point of
social
the
media.
attacks from the GOP. It's not about sports or bathrooms. It's all to scapegoat and make it unacceptable to be out and existing in public.
True. I mean, it is, I would say the primary reason is to scapegoat, but also like these people genuinely hate trans folk and want us gone. And this is a way to facilitate that.
Giant. I mean, in that segment alone, they didn't say that for no reason, and I know I lived it. They said a couple of times, they're like, I'm afraid to say this because of what's going to happen on Twitter. I'm afraid to say this. Because are you saying that people, leftists, don't attack others on Twitter for the slightest?
Maybe have a fucking spine about it? Like, I don't know. Maybe have balls?
Disagreement?
Oh, absolutely. But the point
That's
is
not
that,
what
you know, we're
changes the
talking
outcome
about
of
being
elections,
online.
though.
Exactly. We're talking about, you know, normie voters, people
Yeah,
who
he's Twitter brain poisoned.
aren't chronically online like we are. And so, you know, these topics make their way to the mainstream because Democrats will do exactly that. They'll say, we're being attacked for defending this issue, when you don't have to defend the issue at all. You can, I'm again saying, you can hand wave it away and talk about things that really matter.
But Jules,
which
that's not what the leftists did. You're saying the exact opposite of what they did. They didn't wave it away.
What leftists? Why are you talking about leftists like they're a monolith that have coordinated specifically to wrong you, Jenk?
They said,
I'm saying that's what the people with the mic, the people who normie voters listen to, didn't do that. They started talking about, oh, we're being attacked by the left for having a reasonable position. So why are you talking about it at all? Why don't you talk about it within the fringe context that it exists and where it rounds down to zero? There are decisions to be made. We do have to support trans rights, but doing it through this narrow venue is crazy. And that's how it looks to voters. It looks like the entire Democratic Party represents this fringe issue that mainstream Democrats want to defend against.
Jules, you're now saying
most people aren't online like that.
You're now saying that you agree with the position that I had, which is wave it away. This is not the hill to fight on. And when I said that, the entire leftist ecosystem.
It's not the hill to fight on, but like redirecting the conversation and just saying, yeah, trans undocumented immigrants shouldn't get healthcare. That's not redirecting the conversation. That's ceding the point. Like there's a difference between that.
Collapsed in on itself. How dare you? We fight on this issue. Well, how did it turn out for us? And look, Jordan, I stipulated in the beginning, we all agree she lost the issue because she loves her corporate donors. She's talked about how I have 90 corporate CEOs who agree with me. Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney and agrees with me, and that's what cost her the election.
Look, guys, clearly what's happening here is that on Inauguration Day, Donald Trump is going to step aside and bring Cenk onto the podium. And surprise, you secretly elected him. You see, Cenk Uygur secretly changed his name to Donald J. Trump. It's called the presidential switcheroo maneuver. It's very rare.
But it was not a small issue that the number one ad that they ran was on this, and the polling indicated that this was the one that worked the best. And there's other things, guys. We said there was real crime. Every leftist screamed, there's no crime. It's in your imagination. Well, and they claim to represent Democratic voters. Then here in California, we had Prop 36, anti-crime bill. In California, not Alabama. In California, it passed with 70% of the vote. I told you that Democrats.
Yeah, I wonder if people knew what they were voting on. Like, I'm not privy to California politics, but I would be very curious to know what sort of messaging went out around that led to that that being taken up in such numbers. Like, I'm wondering, and I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if it's the kind of ballot initiative where if you don't vote on it, it's tallied as a no. Like when we're talking about ballot initiatives, like and propositions and stuff like that, wording of it is very important, but also so is education prior to voting, and so is how the voting is tallied. And I don't know any of those things, but those are all very important to know, and it seems a little weird to me that 70% of Californians would deliberately vote to keep incarcerated criminals like doing unpaid labor.
Democratic voters do not agree with extreme leftists. They care about crime and they don't want to pay for these surgeries, et cetera, et cetera. The polling shows I'm true. The elections show I'm overwhelmingly correct. But I guarantee you the reaction to this debate by every leftist online will be, how dare he? He's a monster.
I mean, I don't think he's a monster. I just think he's kind of stupid and hasn't really thought this through. And
it's all his fault.
Oh, and may or may not be, well, I think he's just not really thinking his position through, and maybe poorly communicating along the way.
And oh my God, we should double down and quadruple down, and we should, there is no crime. He's helping their framing. Well, okay, 70%. The Democratic voters are definitively on my side, both on economic populism like Medicare for all, and on these social issues. We're not saying abandon trans people. We're not saying lock up people that didn't do anything wrong or that smoked a joint. We're saying nobody said to take domestic assault and turn it into a misdemeanor. What the hell are you defending that for? Are you nuts? That's an injustice. and Democratic voters don't want it, let alone Republican voters. So you guys can keep emphasizing. I'm not the one emphasizing, I'm the one saying get past it. And every left-wing show online is like, don't get past it, don't get past it. Talk about this for months and months and months until we lose every goddamn election.
I don't think it's like a totally fair characterization of how people are responding to that topic or how they should engage with it. I think what's important is the context with what he was talking about was that she lost because of the extreme left and those 3 issues that he laid out, which is not true. This guy has worked on 2 campaigns that ran against Trump. He lost both of them. He certainly knows losing, but he does not know how to win. And when you think about what motivates him to say it, it's much easier to scapegoat progressives and the left. And as he threw in later in a jab at Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders, and like maybe
Cool. You know, having my setup over here, I can't see chat. Damn. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna start that part over. I'm gonna start this part over. So this is California voters reject a measure that would have banned forced prison labor. There's a lot of really good and interesting info in here, and essentially, bottom lining it for you, the people who have spearheaded this like activist movement for Proposition 6 in California, which would have ended forced prison labor, they consider what they achieved in California a pretty big success. And it's also worth noting here that multiple states, including Colorado, Tennessee, Alabama, and Vermont, have voted to rid their constitutions of forced labor exemptions in recent years. And this week, they were joined by Nevada, which passed its own measure. And I just want to say, like, it seems pretty wild to me that Cenk is making this argument when fucking Tennessee was able to do it. Tennessee was able to do it. Nevada just did it. Seems like it's actually a pretty good and popular thing to do. I think we can also do it in California. And, you know, there's an interview in here as well, just a short one. Yeah. George Eilis, a retired teacher in Bree who voted against Prop 6, said he found it confusing that the initiative aimed to ban slavery, which was outlawed in the U.S. in the 19th century. After finding out more about the measure, Eilis said it likely would not be economically feasible since prison labor cuts costs for upkeep, he said. I really couldn't get any in-depth information about the thinking behind putting that whole Prop 6 forward, so that made me leery of it. If I can't really understand something, then I'm usually going to shake my head no. So honestly, like, I mean, if that's indicative of the position, and granted it's one guy, but like, if that's at all indicative... Oh, wait, here we go. Proposition 6 saw the second least campaign spending among the 10 statewide initiatives on the ballot this year. Oh, okay, so it was also not funded, so there wasn't education on it.
Come in, Jack. Jack.
Comrade Girl, thank you for the $10 super chat. Okay, yeah, so basically Cenk is speaking here from a position of not knowing what the hell he's talking about and attributing the lack of popularity of Prop 6 to, like, just general voter maliciousness, which is a mistake. Most voters just had no idea what Prop 6 was and didn't know what was at stake, and so they voted against it. And that's no surprise considering California is a colossal state and Prop 6 only had less than $2 million of funding to get the word out about what it is. You know how arguments for or against get published in voter guides? The voter guide had 0 arguments against Prop 6. Yeah. But a lot of people don't read those voter guides.
Maybe progressives in the squad, it's easier for him to scapegoat those policies, those people, that voting
See ya,
bloc,
Gilda.
rather than look inward. Because to do that, he would find fault with himself, find fault with the donor class, and ultimately it would shake up and change the paradigm of how people within the party view the party. They're unwilling to do that because they're beholden to corporate interests. On that, we agree. But the thing is, ultimately, at the end of the day, you stand up for these things because it's the right thing to do, not because they're popular. And like you gained ground on marriage
Bingo.
equality and gay rights, it might be a similar and long fight. But you shouldn't abandon it or throw them away or throw them under the bus like Harris did simply because it's politically expedient now.
Okay, so you're okay with losing the election because you want to fight for those issues. I mean, you just said it.
You already lost. That's
Okay,
not what
all
I
right.
showed you the data.
Oh my god. The immediate, we already lost. Like, we tried it your way, Jank. We tried it your way. Your way is the loser strategy. That's what this election season showed. Like, your Jenk's milquetoast, pro-capitalism, liberal bullshit lost this election. And he's having a devil of a time trying to, like, reconcile with that.
No one cares. No one cares. It's the last ranking issue.
You're delusional.
The
$40 million in ads.
The
You think no
economy
one
was the
cares?
#1 issue for people. No one's going in there and be like, I'm mad about trans people, so I'm going to vote for Trump. No one did that.
You're 100% wrong.
The economy,
Tons of
every
people
poll,
are
every exit poll said it was the
100%
economy.
right.
Okay, at the very end of that ad, which worked spectacularly, you guys are denying.
The ad shifted opinion. That's true. But did people vote based on that ad, or did people vote based on how they feel the economy is going? And again, I'm just throwing it out there. When the main economic proposition is that guy's going to cut my taxes and make other people pay for it, and, you know, under this Biden guy, my wages have barely gone up while everything else has gotten a lot more expensive. And the person running this Kamala Harris person, who I don't know much about her, but like she's saying she's going to be just like Biden. And I haven't really heard anything that would help me and mine deal with these high prices. That's the compelling narrative here. Like, for most working class people, and I think that this is one of the under talked about parts of this entire election cycle, this was one of the first elections in modern history where the Democrats lost the working class. And there's a reason for that, and it's not because working class people just hate trans people. A lot of working class people are trans people. Working class people went to Trump because he had the compelling economic narrative. And what Democrats were offering seemed like nothing. Maybe like a ladle to bail out a sinking ship. Like that's probably what it felt like for a lot of working class folk.
In reality, every poll
And
shows.
by the way, it doesn't matter if Trump is lying, because they didn't know that they don't know enough to know that Trump is lying. And even if they think he could be lying, they're willing to roll the dice and see if it improves their circumstances, because they already know what they're getting with Biden. And they, you know, the numbers on charts might look really good, doesn't feel very good. If you're working class and your wages have been stagnant for 50 years and everything just keeps getting more and more expensive. And even if you saw that 5% bump in wages under Biden, things got 10% more expensive, 20% more expensive sometimes. So Rent kept going up, wages didn't. At least not for working class people.
Showed it worked spectacularly.
Yeah, no
Okay.
one,
do we know
no
it
one
worked
walked out and told a pollster that's why they voted.
Yeah.
Not a single person.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, the American people loved it, guys. You were right. Oh my God, they loved it. They want you to run on it again. That's
yeah,
such a genius idea.
that's why Trump won.
Okay, so how many times do I have to tell you that that was not the #1 issue? That was but did it help? Did it help? And besides which, I also don't agree with you guys. I don't think paying for undocumented immigrant surgery is somehow some moral, great, amazing thing that we have to fight.
Again, all it would take to stymie him here is reframing it as, I think prisoners should be able to get medical care they need. That's it. A simple reframing of this, like, completely kills his argument. Because then his argument has to be, essentially, well, I think some prisoners deserve health care and some shouldn't get it. And that is an indefensible position in my mind.
Fight for. We have a giant number of issues in America. If they came in and asked for hip replacement surgery, I wouldn't be in favor of it. Why are we dying on a hill? We don't, half of us, not half of us, in terms of Democratic voters, all right, last thing. Can you guys be honest and say most Democratic voters agree with me and not you guys?
Yeah, most Democratic voters agree with me. They want Medicare for all. We just talked about it. We just agree with it.
Jordan,
That would be
we
an
all agree
extension
to
of it.
that.
That'd be an extension of it. So
That
people,
would be an extension of
if
it.
you're incarcerated, you
Yeah, there we go.
don't get
Jordan's
you
nailing
don't get
it.
medical coverage. What do you think Medicare for all is? Does it cover gender affirming care? Because in my world, it does.
Okay, God bless you. You run the next election on that.
Oh. So, Jordan's position here that he clearly articulated is that gender affirming care is part of Medicare for all. And Cenk just said, in your world, good luck with that. I think that's pretty clear that Cenk does not support healthcare for trans people. I don't know. I think that's pretty conclusive. Maybe he misspoke. But that seems like one hell of a misspeak. And frankly, I doubt he has issued any kind of correction because, TYT is kind of allergic to that, as we've seen with the Venezuelan gangs taking over apartments story that they, helped propagate.
I want
Which, by the way, Trump is now threatening to deport all the Venezuelans from Colorado, from Aurora, and the Haitian immigrants are fleeing the area that he called them out in. The Venezuelans are doing the same. Thanks, Cenk.
the rest of the country to know that the great majority of Democratic voters do not believe in those issues. They believe in protecting everyone's constitutional rights, but they don't agree with these fringe issues. And here we are making this.
Well, yeah, no, working class people are the vehicle for bringing down neoliberalism. Yeah. The thing is, like, working class people are most people. Like, if you write off the working class in America, you've written off most Americans. Most people on the planet are working class. So, like, yeah, no.
Same exact mistake where you guys are defending something that is indefensible.
Also, something important to remember about Blair Mountain, Melanie, since you bring it up. The Battle of Blair Mountain came about because a bunch of World War I veterans who worked in unionized mining outfits got together to go support miners who were on a strike, and they were being they were being attacked by company men, essentially. And the miners lost the Battle of Blair Mountain, guys. They lost. The federal troops rolled in, and the miners threw down their weapons, and that was kind of that. You know, a lot of them were World War I vets. They didn't want to fight other soldiers in the U.S. military, and they lost. And union membership went from like 50,000 down to like under 1,000. Like it plummeted. But that in the long run, movements like Blair Mountain led to the pressure on FDR that forced him to accept the New Deal. Like, those kinds of conflicts were bubbling up all over the place. That kind of effort, the number of people fighting for their rights in aggregate, wound up winning the day and winning the massive sea change that was the New Deal, which was in fact a compromise between socialism and liberalism. And now we are seeing that compromise be eroded by neoliberalism. You can think of neoliberalism as kind of the rot on that compromise. And yeah. But it's worth noting that Blair Mountain was lost.
Jink himself is an immigrant, but his family was documented, so to hell with undocumented immigrants, huh? I'll say once again F. Jinkuger.
Fair. But also, the thing is, those efforts at Blair Mountain weren't in vain. You know, our struggle is never in vain. It might feel like it sometimes, but it never is. The march of history depends on that struggle.
And whether it, like, you're falling back on this simple thing of like, it's not the #1 issue, so it didn't hurt. No, that is not a logical connection. It doesn't have to be the #1 issue for it to hurt our chances of winning. Besides which, again, I don't agree. I don't agree that more crime is such a great thing, or that crime doesn't exist, or that...
No one's saying crime doesn't exist, but they are saying crime is down. Crime is like back down to like 2019 levels and continuing to go down.
Taking a whole bunch of felonies that were terrible crimes and turning them into misdemeanors is somehow justice. It's not justice. It's the exact opposite. That's why the overwhelming majority of Democratic voters agree with me. But what we do on the Young Turks, guys, and the most important part of this entire conversation is, did we not know this was going to be...
Also, most Democrats support trans rights. So I don't know where you're at on this one, Jenk.
...be a debate? We did. That's why we said it in the beginning. But we have these conversations, no matter who you agree with. We air out these opinions, and then you get to make up your mind. I love that Jordan and Jules passionately defend their position, and that's how we do it on the Young Turks. We'll be back. Thanks for watching the Young Turks.
No, I'm good. I'm good. We don't need the outro. But I present all of that to you to kind of lay the groundwork for where Jenk has been lately in the political sphere. And I now want to show you 2 additional things. Okay? 2 additional things. And I have to say, I think Jenk is gone. I don't consider him a leftist ally. I frankly, I'm struggling to even conceive of him as a liberal ally. Because this is now where he is. You know, that video went up, let's see, when did that go up? November 8th. So it's been like 2 weeks since then. And 4 days ago, this exchange happened on Twitter. When I became a Democrat, it was the more tolerant party. Republicans were run by religious nutjobs and corporate robots. Now the Democrats are, in a lot of ways, the less tolerant party, which is an insane thing to say after Donald Trump got elected, running off of a platform of deporting millions of Latinos. The least tolerant part is actually the establishment wing of the party that says blah, 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 blah. Which got the attention of one Elon Musk. Yeah. Now, of course, this continued. I asked Elon Musk to put me in charge of cutting the Pentagon. And he said, "What are your suggestions? I run the largest left-wing network online, and a Democratic leader has never asked me that question. The idea that they would take advice from a populist is disdainful to them. Now, which side seems more open and inclusive? Which side seems more welcoming? And which side tries really hard to drive you away if you disagree even a little with orthodoxy? Which side is asking the questions, and which side is demanding compliance and obedience? While the left is yelling at me not to work with MAGA, here's Donald Trump Jr. saying we should limit generals from working for defense contractors. That's a policy we've been pushing for and gotten nowhere with Democrats on. Who cares who does it as long as it gets done?" And like, if you can do that, I guess that'd be good. But keep in mind that these are people that that Cenk has basically been saying are fascists. He's been saying that for like 8 years. Hell, he's been saying that since like 2015 when Donald Trump announced his run. And he's sitting here being like, ah, yes, the son of the fascist person who I've been calling a dictator. Well, he's going to listen to me and maybe implement some of my ideas. Are you that naive? Are you that stupid? Do you think they actually are going to listen to you? And if you think that they're going to listen to you, how do you rationalize that their listening to you is just going to be used to legitimize them? Is just going to be used to, maybe get one thing passed to make more palatable all of the things that they are going to destroy. Like, to me, more so even than that debate, which was infuriating to watch, this hits hard. Seeing someone who has always propped himself up as a pillar of strength on the left, kowtowing and groveling to these corporate oligarch fucks is, frankly, a betrayal, I guess. I guess I would consider it a betrayal if I thought that, like, if I hadn't seen more signs of this coming, I guess. But, like, it is like an abdication of everything that TYT is built on, you know? You know, I definitely raised my eyebrows when I found out that apparently Peter Thiel's Poly Market had, like, purchased a huge chunk of the TYT studio. But, like, this is pretty pathetic. And I've made my arguments, so, like, that's kind of the only final thing I have to say. That this kowtowing, bootlicking son of a bitch, well, I didn't think he was any of those things, I guess. But I have been known to be wrong. So, yeah. It's the destruction of the network, in my mind. Gonna hit that button.